Zach and doesn't mind.
I got my
In my personal space.
All
right, folks, sorry about that with the technical difficulties, but I think we're good to go now. So welcome to our, this is our committee meetings for the month of June. It's pretty much, we just kind of run through the committees, so we don't have a specific informal time for public comment, but when something comes up on the agenda and you have a question at the end of the committee discussions, we'll throw it out there for questions. So without further ado, I like to announce also, we do have a plan for an exec session immediately following this meeting for contract negotiation issues. So.
Dr. Chang.
Okay, thank you. We did these numbers that you have under budget and finance will continue to change between now and next week. The millage, of course, will not. The fund balance piece that we are still working on. Due to the governor's budget changes, we originally, if you remember back as we were working through the budget process, we estimated 50% of the governor's allocation for basic ed funding and special education funding as what we thought, and most school districts in Berks County did, as the thought safe number on the governor's budget. It came out at the end of last week that we were strongly encouraged by PASBO's only budget 25%, which lost us a revenue of approximately $210,000. There has been very little movement on the state budget. We are not hearing anything other than a lot of caution over not budgeting more than 25%. So we did make those adjustments. We are, once we get through Wednesday, going to go in and start to really dig down again on that 948, as that is a lot of fund balance usage. We did pick up more in interest rates. And as you'll see later in the agenda, we did save considerably on the remarketing of our insurance. So those numbers we backed out of that 948. But because there are 3 new members, we wanted to make sure that you saw the resolutions in advance of next Wednesday, because they are kind of a lot of legal language in there. These are straight out of what we have to do. So the fund balance usage will be different. I'm not going to read them all to you, but the one thing we did want to point out too, as you go through those, is the homestead farmstead. And then Ming did put a paper together, presentation for you, which we'll go over a little bit in a few minutes. That's the impact that will have on that 499 mil increase on the taxpayers, because it really does benefit them. That we got considerably about more money in what we refer to as the slot money from the state, as far as offsetting that and what that does in helping to level that out a little bit. So right now, as you're sitting at tonight, is 499 mils and 948 from the fund balance. And the other thing that we are recommending, and as you go through all the tax pieces, which is what the resolutions are in those first basically 8 motions, is number 8. And that if there is any money left above the 8% after the general fund audit of 21-22, which we are not anticipating cannot be any higher than the 799% per school code, that it be placed back into the PESERS reserve so that the board would have that as an option to use for balancing the budget moving forward. Your capital reserve fund at this point is healthy, and you do have the 1.5 million in the bond that you just borrowed for capital projects. So this would be a year to switch from dedicating money to capital reserves back into PESERS. So you would have that committed fund to use if there were to be money left at the end of the audit, which at this point we're not sure where we will stand as we're still crunching those numbers.
Thank you for your effort on that.
So after that, basically number 9, to summarize it, 10 is just budget transfers, which we'll continue to do through May and June. Number 11 is we will have budgetary transfers that we will have to do after June 30th, which closes our fiscal year, which will not be previously approved, but will have to be required by Herbine as we start the audit at the end of July. And August is the planning for the 21-22 audit. And then in your packet or online was the homestead farmstead information for you. And it does show, did you have that green paper?
Yeah.
Do you want to review what you put together, or do you want me to do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, like Dr. Shank mentioned that 22-23, we are going to receive $785,190 compared to 21-22, it increased $125,914, about a 25% increase. And meanwhile, our homestay farmstay Brooks County the county proved the homestay farmstay is 3,746. So all those 3,746 share this 785,190. So the 22-23 each homestay farmstay will receive like $210.75. And compared to 21-22, it's increased each homestay farmstay increased $44.36. And you can compare that the tax millage increased 0.499, then actually the homestay farmstay increased it $44.36. So compare that the impact tax for taxpayer is $16 for average homestay farmstay. The impact is $16.33.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else for budget and finance? That's it.
Personnel, we have 11 items on the agenda. Mostly are routine type hires and some resignations and the like. Dr. Hank, you just do a kind of a Cliff Notes version of that one, but then I want to focus at the end on number 10. On that one.
Number one is just an FMLA leave for a secretary who has been out. Number two is the BCIU guest teacher program, which is another way that we work with the BCIU to get substitute teachers in our buildings, K through 12. We are working for the first time, I can say, get the substitutes approved now for the 22-23 school year. And by doing it now instead of in August, we are able to actually send out letters that which are called reasonable assurance letters, that now that we actually have the HR position, which we thank you for. This will help our unemployment not going up because these people will be short of their job, which means they will not be able to collect unemployment over the summer from us, which will save you a couple $1,000s. So you'll also see on next week's agenda the guest teacher list as well. We didn't quite have that prepared, but Deb has been great transitioning as we're starting to go into the new role and delegating a lot of stuff that I've not been able to get to her. And I thank you for that. So it's already saved you probably $2,000 and $3,000 since you've made that move. Mr. Reaver has been on FMLA and will continue to be out on FMLA. Sadly, but we wish her well. The resignation of Cheryl Crew, middle school science teacher, effective at the end of the year. She's leaving education. Approved the transfer of Megan Reichert from middle school special ed to elementary special ed. Kathy Stiefel from high school special ed to middle school special ed, which puts our opening here at the high school. Number 8, Gloria Richards going from elementary reading to the high school reading specialist. So we'll actually have reading specialists now in all 3 buildings. Number 9 is the hiring of special education teacher to fill one of the 2 openings here at the high school. Angela Bruex has done an outstanding job for us as an LTS this spring. Number 10 would be the representation of Cable Kellen, Litzen Board, for the solicitor and label counsel for the 22-23 school year as the rates were as presented in the proposal.
One question in the motion, I was concerned about the action tied in with the motion. We're approving the presentation of them. Aren't we, like the presentations in there a couple times, we're actually hiring them as our solicitor for the upcoming fiscal year.
That representation was what was in last year's motion for, that's how.
Okay, I just found it rather cumbersome, so we could
Sure.
wordsmith that. I appreciate it.
Yeah. You have a suggestion?
Representation of KO.
I'll send you, I'll email you. I have some notes I made at home.
Okay.
I'll email that to you.
Yeah, I just took it off of last
Yeah.
year's and just
Okay.
cut and pasted it.
Thank you.
Good.
Number 11.
Sorry. Number 11 is just a substitute or summer tutor for ESY for our online students who are doing credit recovery and acceleration with Kim Zieber.
Anything else for personnel?
I had a question with the sub list. Is this, I don't remember from years before. Is this a substantial list? Is this going to get you covered or would you want more?
This is the initial list that we have that you usually see in August.
Okay.
But the differences with the health is now I can actually get it done when it should have been done now, so that we get rid of the unemployment claims. It is smaller and getting smaller every year, and it does not cover us. We are very grateful. The ones that we have been longstanding subs, and a lot of them are committed only to Oley Valley, so we were grateful for that. But the list used to be like 2 pages, and it's shrinking every day. And our guest teacher list is probably only
Is the
about
guest
9
teacher
pages.
list the people who are in college as juniors that can sub?
No, we have not had any of the universities reach out for that. The guest teachers are those people in the community that would have a bachelor's degree in something and wish to be a substitute teacher, would go through the 2-day training at the IU and then get emergency certified each year by completing that, and then they could be a guest teacher. It still pays the same as a substitute teacher, they're just emergency cert versus a permanent cert.
I have some of my students that are starting to do this that have transferred to town. So I can put some information out there. Because I think that's great to get the students in and fill the list, but I'll try to throw some stuff out there, talk to Dr. Keith.
Yeah, just have them reach out, because we've not heard, at least, I don't know about Kutztown, but, because they're right there, but we've not heard anything on this side of this part of the county as far as.
Yeah, because
any
one of my
the
students is
universities.
a government on this. They're real excited to be able to do it.
Even with our student teachers, they've not reached out, and we've asked.
Okay.
Like not, they have student teach, but at the same time, if they could student teach even in the same grade level as a substitute across the hall from their partner teacher, they've not entertained any of those conversations
Okay,
with us.
if you're okay with that, I'll try to.
Oh,
reach
most
out and see
definitely.
what we can do.
That would be great.
Thank you, Dr. Shank. Move on to policy.
Okay, we only have one motion, and that's to approve the following policies. 300 section, 30-day public review has been completed. Pretty clear cut. Any questions? Shank, you need that, want to add anything to that?
No, they've been on for about a long time.
We have changes to make or anything, right?
Okay, that's it for me. On the curriculum. Thank you, Doctor. Dr. Shank.
But on the list from graduating class of 22, it's 2 names that were inadvertently missed from last May list. Leah Boku and Jordan Yo, so we're putting them on to make sure they get approved. And we have 100 walking on Wednesday of 107. So on Wednesday night. Hopefully the rain holds off. Number 2 is the Lane Taurus agreement for English Spanish translation services for students for school sites. Number 2 is new story extended school year agreement for 1 student. Number 3. Number 4 is Buxmont, otherwise known as CSF, is a contract. Oops, there. 158 for regular ed and 193 for special education. That is one of our therapeutic academic placement schools. Number 5 is the EduHealth agreement for school psychologist services of 78 per hour, and that's as needed. Number 6 is Malvern Academy tuition contract, it's $230 per day. 21-22 is 200. That's another therapeutic school that we use. Bayada contract for school nursing services for next school year, rates $155 an hour per day. RN and LPN services, we do use those as needed when we need school nursing services for students and or field trips for substitutes. Number 8 is once again the emergency instructional time template for 22-23. If this is a school code requirement 520.1, basically it's the allows you, if you would have to go virtual for any reason, it's still referencing COVID, but it could be any pandemic and the monkeypox or whatever else happens to happen in the next year. But basically, it's the same form we have to submit every year that just says if you meet the thresholds, which they won't tell us till August, for any of the pandemic issues, you can go virtual and the day counts as a school day. So hopefully that will never have to be used. But we do have to submit it. So that's just approval to approve that for school code. Number 9 is the MOU with the school district and Central Berks in accordance with Act 44, which is the school safety things we have to submit for safe schools every year. It's due the end of July. Number 10 is we are requesting a revision to the 22-23 instructional calendar. We would like to move back the end of the school year by 2 days to better align with the rest of the county and not, we would actually have graduating, which would be Friday night of last week, the first week of June, and not have to go into this week, which does align with most of Berks County and does also align better with BCTC, as they are also in the first 2 days of Easter, what was spring break. We're finding that the spring break, I mean, hit or miss with being in. Most schools are in at least the first 2 days of that. BCTC is also in, so it does better align that way. But it does give a more formal end of the year versus going in a couple days into what was this week. Because, to be honest, everybody's done and we're a little late on the draw right now. So we are asking for that change. The calendar does not change the start, doesn't change really anything else except for going in Monday and Tuesday of spring break and then ending 2 days earlier in June. And it does end it on a Friday, which makes it a nice evening for parents. And, graduation and just kind of in line with the rest of the counties. We would like to request that change as well.
Any discussion on that?
Want to make sure that they.
I'm good.
Yeah, good move.
Okay. The next one is 11 is the school, what we call school messenger, which is really known as the Trotto. It's that's 2566. That's the contract for all of the communications that we do for that. Solient Health is another nursing service company that we use as needed for ESY 2022. Number 13 is a correction to the Caron Foundation staff services contract. It should have been 5 weeks instead of 4, and that is grant funded. Number 14 is the plan course outlines for 30-day public review. 6th, 7th, and 8th grade art, financial math, algebra 1A, ELA grade 7, and their novels. I think this is what you had asked for, Mr. Keller. Their novels include The K, Bud Not Buddy, A Wrinkle in Time, The Hobbit, Refugee, Plant Middle School, House Arrest, The Red Pencil, Up from the Sea, and The Crossover, and Swing.
Thank you.
So that they're broken out, and then the standard anthology that we use forever. So, but they're the novels specifically that are included, just so they're separate. If you need copies of those books, I can get them, but you can always look them up online to get them. 8th grade ELA is coming. I'll probably do that. I'll break their novels out the same one. That's okay with you?
Absolutely.
Okay, just want to make sure I did that the right one.
No, that's great.
If anybody has any questions on those, just let me know. But,
Thanks for putting those novels in there. That's
that way it stands out
Yeah.
without having to read it. So, you know, that way it's no
Yeah.
question.
Good.
And then 15 is the special ed comprehensive plan for the years 22-25 on 30-day public review. It is posted. There was another revision that we posted like probably about 15 minutes ago before the meeting. But it's the one that has to be submitted to PDE every 3 years. And it has all the data and everything in it for special ed and gifted services. That's on public review. It will have to be approved in July's meeting, and then it's submitted to PDE by July 31st. And basically everything about special ed and student services that you ever wanted to know or not know. And we've had the meetings with the parents, the meeting with the teachers, all the other stuff that goes into comprehensive planning for schools. As our district comprehensive plan is due in the fall, and you'll get the district plan will be coming to you, and probably we're hoping in no later than September for approval in October. I think our submission date is like November or December of next year. So any questions as you read through that? And then we have there's a PowerPoint on there too, which we call the short cheat sheet version. So if you don't want to read the 100-page version, just read the PowerPoint version. It kind of gives you the ins and outs of the services we provide, caseloads, kind of the information that you want on student services is in the PowerPoint. I know Mrs. Jackson is on that committee. It kind of gives you the nuts and bolts of it without having to read all the PDE required language that we had to fill out. So I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add with the plan. If it's good reading material, if you need to fall asleep too.
Yeah, sure.
And then the plan course outlines have completed 30-day public review are all listed for you, and then we will post those on the website as well. And the textbook for Earth Science, Space Science class has also completed its 30-day public review.
it for curriculum. Next meeting is July 18th.
Papers you do want to jump on?
Not really. PNT, Dr. Shank.
Okay, the number one is the copy paper bid for the first joint purchasing is just, they do it in 6 months. We got to ratify that. Number two is Pave Connect. Pave Connect is the state contract for paving. There's also one for roofs. We don't need one of those for 30 years. And this is, we did the three quotes, I should say, for pave connect parking lot repairs, both campuses, seal coating and line striping. What I did was actually, thanks to Mr. Clemmer, I worked with him at the IU because they're looking at paving projects as well. We had originally looked at quotes to redo our parking lots in both the upper campus and the lower campus. And people and engineer people and architects were telling us it was like $1.1 million to mill and have to repave, and we kind of like went into sticker shock. So what I did is I actually just went out and I'm working with Mr. Clemmer, had Pave Connect come out, and because as I explained to Mr. Heckman, they had an issue at the IU that I had heard about where an architectural firm wanted to bid a project and they estimated it was over $200,000 to fix project. Pave Connect and looked at the same place, same thing, and under state contract came in and did the work for 75. So I gave them the same specs that we were going to use for our paving project that was $1.1 million for both campuses. And they came in with the quotes that you see below at 61,000 for the high school, 76 for the lower campus, which, as you know, is a lot more square footage down there. They are able to seal coat it, stripe it, fix the issues that we have with the ponding of water, fix all the cracks that are, some of them are over an inch in some of the areas, especially on the lower campus. Take care of some of the areas where in the lower campus where it has washed out, and take care of the milling that is worn. And not have to mill it, not have to dig it out, not have to re-pour it, and then have the inspection, which is another $750 for each campus. And then basically you would just pay to have them come back and fix it, which is a couple $1,000s every year, and they will be able to, for $800-some thousand less than what we originally thought we were going to spend. You'll buy another 10 years, which, in talking with the township, they should have an answer on whether or not you'll take buses down Main Street and what that looks like.
Finally, we'll get an answer.
Yeah, it'll be sometime in the next 7 to 10 years. So this will buy you time without having to spend $1.1 million for what that's going to look like, while saving you $800,000. But we normally would spend at least $20,000 to $30,000 just on standard repairs and striping every year without even seal coating them. And when you seal coat them, that's going to be able to fix the ponding of the water and the drainage issues that we have on the lower campus. This will take care of that. The high estimate on the third quote for the high school was probably pushing, I don't know, funny, it was like 79,000. The third quote, the highest quote on the lower campus was in the 90s. So that was your ranges on the three. And I could specifically send you out the three quotes, but of course I went with the lowest, and they were the apples to apples. And these guys that are doing the work are out of Lancaster. So they are relatively local. If we have a problem, we know where they're at.
Good. No problems with that, I hope. Go ahead.
No, that's good.
Number 3 is Solutions ATV. They have they're the ones who put the sound systems in at the elementary and the high school. Auditorium sound system at the elementary cafeteria. That's their maintenance contract for servicing, training, and maintenance on those systems. 26,225. It went up about $300. Number 4 is Xylem, which is the middle school pump maintenance, preventative maintenance, and inspections on middle school pumps. Cost that is the 22,400. Take care of that. Number 5 is the Singer equipment that we thought was going to be $150,000. The Singer kitchen equipment for the lines, the milk coolers, all that other stuff came in at $99,953. So we just saved $50,000 right there. And I had sent that out to you. It is posted online. So that's what CR is, the capital reserve. That's that $150,000 PO. So we don't need all of that. So that'll go back into the capital reserves. That was fun negotiating, get his prices down on that. But the ladies are really excited about what it will do, and it'll be really cost efficient as far as electric and goes as well. So we're happy about that. The last van, the driver for the school year. So we start over in July with all the new ones. It's Margie Partridge. And then number 7, this credit goes to Ming because I haven't had time to even work on insurance. So Ming did all of it. So thank you, Ming, for saving us a boatload of money. These are not to exceed numbers. We're still meeting, or Ming's meeting, I should say, and I'll get there if I can. But Wednesday is afternoon with the insurance company brokers again. We're going to try to bring some of these numbers down, but these are not to exceed numbers. What they were in the expiring term, and of course, in your proposed term. for next year for your insurance. And we were paying in 21, 22, 301,000 for all your insurances. And as most of you know, we've made sure over the years that our insurance was top of the line in what we cover, especially in our liability and our violence coverage and our terrorism coverage, because you just unfortunately never know in today's world. Was 301, 394. And then for 22, 23, we are down to 248.5. The two pieces that we do want to point out to you is that workman's comp line is 87,807 for those of you that have been around for a few years. And probably 4 years ago, that number alone was $240,000. So the work that's being done in buildings and grounds and workplace safety committees and our building safety committees and safety and security committees and our secure entrances that we put in, all of that stuff saves you considerably amount of money just in your insurance end of it. Because I mean, the secure entrances, when they were like celebrating when they found out we put them in, because that's all part of safety and security. So it saves you long term on your insurances there. The other one to point out that did go up and will continue to go up is your cyber liability. And we were lucky that that came in where it did. We were anticipating it actually being higher. And that is a full-fledged plan. So that's anybody, you know, basically if you have an attack of any kind, they come in, they swoop in, they do all your communications, they do your cleanup, they take care of all of it for you. We basically have a triage team on our policy that will come in and manage all of it for you. So you just call them and they come in. So it's not like the district has to try and manage that on their own, because that's huge. So there's other than that, you haven't even excess liability, school leaders liability went up a little bit, which you know why. But other than that, Ming's done an outstanding job. So I thank her for her work on that and picking up the pieces for me, because I wasn't able to help her much with these this year.
Great job.
Good, thanks, man. Under information, next meeting to be determined. Student activities.
We need to start off with a discussion.
We'll throw it to Mr. Rhodes since he offered to come and help.
Sure. So probably guess with the fall season, we had a discussion around girls soccer. Did survey and do things over and over there again, and we have of those surveyed, we have 16 that have said for high school next year that they are either definitely playing or most likely playing, where co-op was a lot less. So our proposal there is to run with it. We had a meeting with parents and kids to explain that essentially that 16 turns into 10 or 11 from August, won't have a co-op option, and essentially there would be no plates push there, that they continue in.
No, pull it down. That was on. I don't think people are kind of straining to hear you.
Okay. So the idea there is that we continue with that and start looking. Our coach has left, so we would be looking for a new head coach there at the high school level. There are 3 or 4 seniors at the upcoming 8th grade class, the big group. That's the group that's got about 11, 12, 13 that are playing. After that, talking with the youth league commissioner, it really drops for the next several grades. We'll see over the coming years. But we would expect that next year would be our lowest numbers for that, based off of that upcoming 8th grade group and the size that they are. So there would be no need to co-op with that at this point. In the meantime, we were also asked by our swim parents to consider water polo and swim co-op. Spoke with the 2 main schools that touch us that we can co-op with. That's Muhlenberg and Exeter. Muhlenberg already has too many on their team, and they do have co-ops with Fleetwood and Brandywine, I believe, in water polo. Exeter did say that they would be interested in that. I'm not sure, Dr. Shanky, they have the numbers for the co-op with Exeter. So Exeter bases, as you know, our co-ops that we have right now are Muhlenberg, Fleetwood, and Brandywine. Our co-ops with Brandywine, we do not have any fees attached to, either us going there or them coming here. Muhlenberg has a rider in there that could be up to $100 per person, and Fleetwood for high school football is $500, and middle school is $350. Exeter bases all of their co-ops off of actual expenses every year. So most of their fees are upwards of $1,000 per student. for their co-ops, and it could change from year to year. I'll say ranges, the lowest looks like it's 552, and upwards of over 1,100 for wrestling. So there is a much more expense with the swimming and water polo co-op there. Currently, our kids do not have the chance to play water polo. Swimming, they do it as independent, which we've had some success at with the independents over the years. For those of you that have been around, know the swimming has been the debate because some of them have wanted to be independents, some of them have wanted to be part of a team. Right now, the swing is definitely they want to be part of a team and have that additional training opportunity. So I told them that I would present that option. The water polo, the numbers that Exeter gave me are from 2018, 2019. That's the last, I guess that's the last they updated their per cost. Girls water polo was 552. Boys is 688, which again, it's kind of crazy that they're different between the genders, but again, they're basing it off of their expenses divided by the number on the team. That's how, so it makes sense where they're getting them from, but it could change from year to year. And then swimming, so water polo is a fall sport for both boys and girls. Swimming is the winner. Girls swimming is 706 and boys swimming is 1,014. Exeter does not have their own pool, so that probably also includes rental of their pool. Although if you're maintaining your own pool, you're probably paying more than
And that money is coming from your budget?
So that in the past, yes. So like the football fees, it's coming out of the FI
Oh, yeah,
budget.
but-
That yes, so that's where we had. Yeah, that's where we have paid those fees. We have 7 co-ops right now in place, potentially 11 there, and they all have kind of been approved with similar manners, but also some different parts to it, depending on the school and the sport, with funds there of paid.
How many kids do we have? Boys
So-
and girls?
So what I can give you with the water polo and swimming is this year we had 1 girl and 2 boys that swam. I do know, for example, we have a senior this year that's going to Shippensburg swim. She swam as an independent her sophomore year, chose not to go through that independent process, just continue to swim club. I am not totally sure how many club swimmers we have out there. I would estimate maybe 4 or 5 that would do the swimming. The water polo, I'm not quite sure. Family who has 2 kids right now, one that are very good swimmers and are very interested in water polo. Exeter's water polo numbers are down, which is why they are interested in entertaining that
So parameters, what are you?
that
looking at?
option.
What are you looking at parameter wise, timeline and all that stuff?
So water polo is one of their sports that is not really a PIAA sport. It does not have a PIAA championship. So co-ops with them, there's no classifications.
Like bowling.
It's like bowling. Yes, water polo and bowling is essentially the same there, where PIAA does not sponsor it. So there's really no time frame outside of having that agreement with Exeter before the start. We still have to apply because PIAA oversees it. They just don't have a state championship for it.
So PIAA needs to approve or not?
Yes,
approve?
they
need
do.
To approve.
Yes,
but
they
really
still
don't
approve
support.
it, but they don't have it as a state championship sport. So it'd
Okay.
be very similar to how our bowling co-op is right now with
Okay.
Sound Brandywine. So, we would be looking at summer approval so that they could start in the fall if we were going to do water polo. And I can send out surveys, I can do whatever there. I didn't do anything until I brought those numbers back, because obviously those numbers are drastically larger than anything else that we're doing right now. Just for comparison, I'm just out there. In 2018, 2019, their football was $993 a kid. So it all would double what we're even paying Fleetwood.
Did you budget for anything?
There's nothing line item budgeted there. I would have to
You'd have pulled
shift some
somewhere
things
else.
around and figure out how we could make that work. I can say I know for next year, we're not in dire need of any uniforms, that I can probably shift some things around and start making things work that way. And I don't necessarily see an additional need for next year, but sometimes that can only go so far when you
Well, my
push
question is
things
long
off.
term, like,
Yeah.
because if you're looking, I'm just looking at you, they're basing their just so the board understands, they base their numbers on what we use for, it's called a charter school calculation. So when you bill a charter school student who's participating in your programs, You take the total number, that cost of your program, you divide it by the number of participants, and then that's what you bill your charter school. That's how Exeter does their co-ops. So as their programs become more expensive, their salaries go up, transportation goes up, fuel goes up, all those other pieces, those numbers will continue to climb. You may start with 1 or 2 students, you could end up with 4 or 5. So my question to, we did not put extra money into the athletic budget. But if you end up with, 5 or 6 students in the program, which would be great, don't get me wrong, but then the board health has to understand that you're looking at $10,000 more. Plus the other issue I think that we've run into in multiple sports and our sports as well is the fact that we have to transport them to Exeter, so you will have additional expenses in transportation. So we need to make sure that if you want to do this, which would be great, and we will gladly put it together for you for the start of, for the summer to have it approved. But it's not like the Muhlenberg co-op or some of our other co-ops who do not charge us. They have the ability to, but have not. Exeter has confirmed they will charge you. So there will be expense. Some of our others have them, football does, but football is also extremely expensive. But other co-ops, they have the right to charge us, but do not charge us. So because they just, it's more cooperative and there's agreements between the schools. That you will have an expense that will have to be built into the budget as you move forward. Maybe absorb it, for a few years, but at some point, you need to take, for those that are going to be, on board moving forward, you need to take that into account. It's a wonderful opportunity, but there are pros and cons to it as you want to look at it. Because as you know, everybody's budgets are going to continue to go up. And this is just another area. We just need direction on what you want to do, or what else, if you want us to think about it and bring it back, or next meeting is in July 18th, I believe it is.
Personally, one thing would be helpful for me is if we can get a list of the co-ops that we have now.
Yeah.
Who they're with, what sport,
So I can
number
make
of
it-
participants, all those things.
Exactly, yeah, I do have
If you have
that.
all that.
Yeah, I can copy it for you.
That would be helpful. The other thing is, can we break that down, individual sports versus team sports? There's a lot, if somebody wants to play lacrosse or football, whatever, that's a team sport, even water polo is a team sport. Then you have, to me, swimming's more individual.
Yeah.
Event kind of thing, so to me, that there's a little bit of differentiator there too, so we can get that information, at least for me.
Yeah,
maybe the rest of
yeah, I do have the chart that has all of our co-ops listed, if we had returning numbers, what those numbers would be. Fees charged, all that, so we can make copies of that, so let's see how that, I can email that as well.
Since we were kind of up in the air about the girls soccer, would there have been a fee if we would have co-opted for that?
Essentially, so, and I'll backtrack on that, when I presented this to the girls soccer, we did ask surrounding schools, Muhlenberg was the only option that said yes. Outside of them saying yes, the assumption kind of was it would be the same thing where essentially that one is written that they could charge us up to $100 per student. They have not been doing that as of late. But that's how that agreement, again, pretty much all of our agreements with Fleetwood, Muhlenberg, and Brandywine, and Kutztown are all kind of a little different. They're same template, but
Yeah, I was
That
just
was
curious,
worked out
since we're not
differently.
going to be paying that for that. what-
So it's, we help them, they help us, and
Yeah.
that's been the idea for a long time, but
yeah,
Exeter
Right.
is not willing to.
right. There's,
Go that road.
and that is the dilemma between the schools, where we have pretty much said when we approved the co-ops with bowling and cross country, we knew it would be very few kids, but it was essentially saying, hey, if you send your one kid here, it's not going to really cost us anything else to have those kids here. So we did not tie any money to that. The girls soccer co-op in a way would have saved money because instead of cheaper to co-op than have our own program. But now that we're looking at maintaining that, at least for next year, again, the middle school numbers after this next year, from what I'm hearing at the youth level, would be next to none. 2, 3 possibly. So there could be savings there that can go otherwise. So that's why I think, for next year, looking at, like, I know there's uniform expenses, but there's none that we kind of went off. Uniforms used to be replaced pretty much on an every 6-year cycle. Years ago, we grew with that just because we were replacing uniforms that were still in great shape. So kind of made that a little bit more need basis, but still looking at making sure that we're equitable when we replace different uniforms there.
So the only option is Exeter.
For the swimming and water polo, yes. Well, I guess I did not ask Reading. Reading would be the other one that has.
They touch us too.
Yeah, they touch us, yeah. But as far as the schools that touch us, that's the two that, and actually in water polo, they already co-op with, technically they have Antietam. I don't know if Antietam sent them in. But YMS disbanded their team now. So YMS is gonna co-op with them as well, and they're still struggling for numbers there.
So our kids right now who want to play water polo doing club.
Yeah, I don't even know if they're playing or if it's just our swimmers who want to play water polo, who are good swimmers.
And they want to,
They want that opportunity.
And Exeter's numbers on their
Right.
teams?
From what they said is very low. That's why they're.
Low numbers.
Yes,
They're willing.
that's why they're entertaining essentially a four-way co-op.
But they're not entertaining, helping us.
No.
Trying to negotiate.
Financially.
Negotiate those numbers.
That's what I asked, and it was pretty much, here's what it is, and because they co-op with other schools, this is what they're charging Antietam. And I can share you, I'll have Dr. Shank send you what Antietam sent me, which actually is their like policy of how they collect their numbers and invoice at the end of each year and all that. So they have kind of a process in place, and their process, I think, is probably a little bit more in depth than other districts because of their relationship with Antietam and absorbing so many of Antietam's teams, that I think that's one of the reasons why their co-ops potentially are the way they are right now in terms of the fees that they charge.
Help me out. Girls soccer, weren't we looking at Brandywine at one time?
We were in Brandywine, so, you know, put it out there. Brandywine essentially said no, that they did not want to co-op at this time. They're a single A. They ended up winning the single A district championship, which I think happened right after we had that discussion. Their numbers are still low. They have administration and coach who would like it, but they have a lot of pressure right now that they don't want to go up to double A by a co-op. They did see their youth numbers go up a little bit with the success that they had this past year, which fed into that a little bit. And then also talk with Fleetwood, and Fleetwood's numbers are just too high that they were, if we're talking 3 or 4, then maybe they could, but looking at the current seventh and eighth, next 8th and 9th, they were worried that would give them that would take too much opportunity away from their own kids. Those were the 3 programs that we discussed. And again, when I explained it to the kids and parents with Muhlenberg, it was one of those of, you know, here's the pros and cons. I did also meet with the current seniors who played, because we met with them as sophomores when we needed a new coach and we knew our numbers were going to be hurting, and pretty much said, did we make the right choice of, you know, kind of killing yourself some games by only having 11 put out there in the field, or do you wish we would have co-opted? And ultimately, they came back and said they enjoyed being here. Maybe they would be a little bit more competitive if they were combined with another team, but that was the feedback that I got from this current senior group. So you know, that's where I'm looking at next year of, you know, I am a little worried, yes, that we had there's 16, 17 that say that they're going to play, actually show up in August, but kind of fully put that out to them that if they don't, and you know, there won't be an option to go up at that point because it'll be too late. So, and knowing that the numbers, like I said, the current 8th grade or current 7th to the 8th grade group, a lot of them are playing year round. That's the big group. It's like the senior group where we kind of tried to keep things going for them while we knew that the numbers were there.
Middle school boys soccer is not on this list.
Because we don't have coaches for it right now. The only thing that's on there right now is what we have coaches for. Doesn't mean that we're not having, that's just the list that has coaches to approve at this point.
One more question. You said that line missing dropped their water polo. Who actually has?
So water polo, and well, this would be another one that of why it's as expensive as it is. They will travel, they will go to tournaments out in Western Pennsylvania for weekends. So they will take charter buses, and because there are not a lot of schools that have water polo. It is a sport that if you become good at, is a good chance to have scholarships because there's not a ton of kids playing it. In Berks County, it's Reading, Exeter, Muhlenberg, Mifflin, and Wilson. The 6 in, so, and they do kind of, Wilson's former superintendent, Dr. Ruth, is actually runs kind of the state association state tournament. They break it down in between big school and small school at that point on their own. But again, it's not the state championship is just not a PWA state championship, just like bowling has.
You want to address the lacrosse?
Yeah, if there's questions, if there's questions.
Before we move on to the rest.
Were there any findings, reaching out to anybody in Berks County and wanting a co-op other than Muhlenberg for boys and girls lacrosse?
So the only school that said that they would be interested is Exeter, but as I explained to you, the PWA bylaws flat out say that no agreements will be approved when the intent of the agreement is to improve the quality of the team. So PWA, when I spoke with District 3 and PWA, if we go and drop a co-op and then turn around and say we want to enter into another co-op, they're going to ask why.
Okay, so can we share our reasons why we all have this same interest? I'll start with the future of our little ones, our youth coming up. And I'm not just thinking my son is a junior going to be a senior. I'm not thinking of him, I am thinking of him, but I'm also thinking of those little ones that are coming up. Muhlenberg's youth program is non-existent and they can attest to it. So what's happening is our kids, because we are a smaller school with less, instruction and foundation, we tried to buy into the Muhlenberg youth program for years. There is not one, although we advertise that there is a program. Exeter does have a foundational youth program, which builds into their high school. We are a small district without the opportunities, so we need to find a district that can provide us the opportunities for our kids to grow in the sport. Exeter this year did not have a JV program. Muhlenberg on paper had a JV program. Said they had 33 kids on paper. They had one scrimmage with a JV that played. And from what I was told from other districts, the coach canceled every JV game. So our players from Oley, who did not have youth growing up a program, were expecting to have field time and play JV. They never saw the field. They were considered a varsity player and stood on the sideline. So what I'm saying is Exeter does not have a JV program right now and could really use our numbers, which would help them and us because they do have a youth program, whereas Muhlenberg has no youth program. And at this point on paper says they have a JV program for our kids and they do not. So the intention, it looked great, 33 players on paper on a roster, but then you get to game time and the kids who needed the playing time to get better because they are the younger students did not see the field. Whereas Exeter had 18 kids, did not have the availability to play JV, but with our 5 students could have possibly had a JV team. So it's not always about a winning record. It does say in PIAA about numbers and lack of numbers. Muhlenberg on their own can outfit a team without a, they can do that. They did, they basically did that. So it's kind of frustrating knowing that we are a small school, we do not have a youth program. We need to buy into a youth program to invest in the kids that want to play. And I think we, for the future, need to invest in a youth program. Not necessarily here, I know we're small, we don't have that kind of money, nor do we have the money to be able to outfit our own team. But when you're looking at co-ops, because we are small, I think we need to think about developmentally and foundationally, what do our kids need to be able to go on and play, maybe even at a higher level. I think you guys can both attest.
And actually, I actually started at Muhlenberg, I was a coach, started as a coach. And we actually ended up in state the first season, a health coach, and then I actually decided to leave that program because there was no future. So my daughter is a rising 7th grader, loves lacrosse, but obviously, only small. We've actually been playing with School Valley. And it's been an awesome experience. I know it doesn't border only, so that's probably not an option for us. But it has been a wonderful youth experience. Again, for the girls, because that's, my oldest is my 10th grader. Muhlenberg has literally no Like, there was nowhere for her to play. So that's why we went to school about it. Muhlenberg has no youth lacrosse program, it's not an option. So that's, if we can somehow figure out what we have, because we're not gonna get, better by having no youth program. So we can get a co-op that has a youth program that would help with sport and we could bring it to our schools, that would be great.
So one thing I have to check there is PIAA does not have anything to do with youth, and I understand what you're saying, but if we tell PIAA we're want to change co-op because we want to go somewhere that has a youth program, I don't know if they will see that as a viable reason or not. I can't say without looking into that more. They don't really address youth sports and the feeder system there. So I can't say that they would or would not take that into consideration when they're considering. I would be very surprised if they would, but again, without asking them that specifically of a reason, I still think they would have a lot of warning flags of.
So I think the other, for the high school level, we ended up, I think, when we initiated this co-op, there were a bunch of Oley field hockey players, I want to say, that were on the team, they did a great job, but then we lost all of those players as well, and I think we only have one high school lacrosse player at this point. So I think that's also a concern, there's no numbers now. Right.
And it does, the bylaws do say if a program is disbanded, essentially, the co-op is disbanded, and then it would open up conversations there as far as if you're talking the girls' side. The numbers, you can look at any sport and why people do things or don't continue and look at some of there's multi-sport kids who are only doing, I think the perfect example, this senior class only had 2 kids that played all 3 seasons. That's the trends. That's more and more sport specialization as opposed to doing multiple sports.
All opportunities have been exhausted. So we're saying this is where we are. And it's just concerning because I feel like it's disjustice to our small school and our kids that we're sending them. Because I'm going to tell you what, I can attest to just those kids, those 5 kids, what they went through and the way they've been treated, because I know I've talked to you about this, the way they're treated as a co-op and just their character and the way they represented Oley, but I feel like they deserve more. They deserve a program where they can flourish and they can blossom and they can play.
So what I'm hearing you say, which I agree with 110%, is if we say no to Muhlenberg and we then ask Exeter and they say
yes, then we're.
So PIAA.
Then PIAA says no, we have nowhere.
Well,
So you'd rather have.
but PIAA, there's 2 things I know I highlighted, and one was numbers and one was being competitive.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And Mr. Rhodes and I have said before PIAA many times.
Right.
But I'm just saying to you, we can go that direction, but if they come back and say no, then Mr. Rhodes, you can explain what happens next.
We have no team, right?
There's no team, and then an appeal would probably take between 6 and 12 months to even get on the docket. But I'm just telling you, we certainly can go that way, but we will lose the opportunity. But what I'm hearing from you is that wasn't really an opportunity. If it hurt the kids that were there, then it wasn't good at Muhlenberg, correct?
It's really not. It's being able to play the sport.
Yeah, I hear you.
So say we have what, five or 6 players from Oley? I think 4 of them can play after high school.
Yeah.
But if they're gonna be a Muhlenberg game, play after high school.
So it's better to go and try. Sounds like what I'm hearing, it's better to go and try to get a change and present at PIAA, or they don't even offer us a presentation, they just make a ruling. Go that way because of the opportunities that exist, correct? I'm just trying to throw it out to you because
It's kind of I'm at the end.
I got you.
I'm at the end.
Well, I'm just asking, I'm asking you because we have to have,
Tim, do we know for a fact that Exeter will say yes?
So I spoke with Exeter, yes. And one thing, no, and I'm not saying, it sounds like, we're just, still building a program. When we had this conversation 4 years ago, when we entered into it, push was Dan Boone, Dan Boone, Dan Boone. Muhlenberg beat Dan Boone this year. So from year to year, things can change there too, when you're looking at that. But from a youth standpoint, yeah, that's.
But that would move their classification. Like we are
Yeah,
all
they-
ordered for Dan, small school, small big school, like a big small school, like.
Yeah, Dana Boone had said no. I spoke with them
And they
again
love us,
today.
but
Yeah, Dana
But
Boone will
again,
not.
it changes all their sports. It
So-
would move them up for everything.
Yeah, just
time?
lacrosse.
Just
It's only the sport that it's
Basic
in.
football,
No.
it would affect the
No.
classification.
No, it's just
a
the
sport you
sport
play.
that.
It's only a sport, so.
only a sport.
And the
So-
other thing.
so When would PIAA have to get this request? Because I would like some of these issues that were brought before us to be addressed by you with their athletic director at Muhlenberg. These questions about what taking place.
And some of that, was that asked of Muhlenberg's, were those concerns addressed to Muhlenberg's coaching staff and their administration as well?
No.
Senior
Yeah.
is aware.
Aware of.
At AD, he is aware of the situation, yes.
These kids
I
were.
don't think he's fully aware of the fact that all the JV games were canceled an hour before each game. They literally, the kids were on the buses. I saw the Wilson kids pull up in 2 buses, a JV and a varsity get off, and they were told there's no JV game. This happened every single game. And we had kids. Yeah, the first one was a scrimmage. Yeah. But every other team brought their JV and it was canceled. But we had enough kids to play a JV game.
And the other thing, as far as Exeter, just getting back at 2018-19, you're looking at their cost for boys. I don't have a girls across because I'm guessing they didn't have any NTM kids was $657.
So these kids were able to practice. But
Oh,
just
yeah, they
didn't
went to practice
And they were-
every
they
single
were-
day.
They were probably used very hard in practice.
They worked hard.
So if they would do this deal and the PIAA would say, no, you can't do that, would that reset then the following year? If they would, in other words, if they would just go with Exeter and practice with Exeter. Because
They
it seems
can't.
like
They can't.
they can't even do that.
No,
They won't even let you
It
there.
has to be approved. Can't do that.
Okay, I mean, I have no idea.
Can't do that.
So basically, it's either, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, we stay with Muhlenberg and then it is as it is. And then, continue to address the issues with Muhlenberg, which Tim has been doing. Or we drop Muhlenberg, we go, Exeter will say yes because they want the money and they want the kids, which is Exeter. And I've worked with them for 12 years and so is Tim. Then we go through the PIAA process and then PIAA makes their ruling, which they can either say yes, or they can say no. And if they say no, then the kids have nowhere to play. And then we're done with lacrosse. Or they say yes, and we move over there. But
Okay.
that's kind of what I understand, am I correct?
That's- Yeah.
And that's the
Sounds pretty cut
decision,
and dry to me.
that's the decision you need to, but we need to know, because it's,
Yeah.
because of
Daniel Boone
timeline.
definitely out.
Yes, Danny Boone's out.
All right.
Danny
Tim
Boone,
said he talked to them, they said no.
yeah, they won't take.
I confirmed again today for probably the 10th time.
Do we have to tell Muhlenberg that we're looking at something?
Only thing is fair.
Yeah.
Well, I know, it's,
Absolutely.
I mean, that is the other thing. 'cause
to make
Muhlenberg-
sure the kids have somewhere to play.
No, you have to drop one to go into another. You can't run dual. You have to drop one to go to another. Silver Valley doesn't touch us. Danny Boone will not take us, because it'll move their lacrosse up into Division III. And
AAA.
AAA. And then, Fleetwood already co-ops with Schuylkill Valley. So basically, we stay with what we have, or you run the rest of Exeter, and that's the direction we need from the board as to what you want to do.
Is this a decision you have to make tonight?
I don't know what your
What's the
timeline is.
timing?
Lacrosse being a spring sport, no, it's not a decision tonight. I think Muhlenberg did change their boys classification education and we co-op, because that's why
Yeah.
that was a year later, but again, they didn't care that they're going to AAA.
They would drop
So
back
in
down.
terms of PIAA, but they wouldn't drop back down until the
next
next
cycle.
cycle. You know, again, and just point out that we've had the conversation before when we discussed wrestling and football, what it potentially does, just so the board's aware, we co-op in tennis and girls volleyball. With Muhlenberg, they had potential of saying, okay, then we're dropping everything.
Are there any signs of Muhlenberg trying to improve their program or bring new coaches in? There's,
All
We
one.
were there, we went through that.
yeah, I'm just curious.
Unfortunately, I wish I really-
Yeah.
I wish I
Every time
was.
they don't even show up.
Yeah, I wish I
They're
was.
beautiful facilities, field, equipment. But that's what's lacking, is the whole.
So this is costing Oley,
They don't bill it.
so they're,
Well, basically.
They could.
Transportation.
they could, but yeah, so it's costing us some transportation.
Right.
But if we
You go to
do the thing
Exeter,
with Exeter, it's gonna cost us $688 a whack.
and they're old numbers, so yeah, those numbers will be higher now.
Okay.
Because it may not be approved.
Right, but
Yeah, but
that's the
it's-
risk we take. It's
But
a
that's the
gamble
risk you
we're
take.
having as a board. We say, okay, let's do
Or
this.
you could also
Plus, you-
say,
You could be 700 a kid
Somebody
plus
else paying.
transportation plus the game.
And they have, we're dealing with what, 500 handful of kids.
Yeah, well,
Other school district that we know of, one through this before where they changed co-op. Like, around or is that?
Not that I know of. I know one thing, co-ops in general, as Dr. Markman can attest to, have changed drastically over the last 12 to 14 years. And there's about half the state that is very much in favor of them, and there's half the state that don't participate in them and would love for PIAA to do away with them because they see it as an unfair advantage. Even though you're taking numbers into account, schools who don't participate in them, that's ultimately why our wrestling program got bumped up to Section 1, because the 1 year we didn't have as many forfeits, we made the playoffs, schools in Berks County didn't like that, decided that we're gonna start using our enrollment figures, co-op enrollments for county. So there's probably a 50-50 split of schools that think co-ops are great, and PIAA has continued to expand the options there. But there's definitely a majority, not a majority, there's significant amount that if they were voted on it, they would probably say there should be no co-ops in
And the other
PIAA.
day, my son players on the team, and I sure would definitely rather have a lacrosse season than not
Than
have
not.
a lacrosse season. And I'm not speaking for anybody else here, I'm speaking for my own personal situation, but
then I would say, I would ask, this is just one person, I would ask our athletic director, who's very highly esteemed in Berks County and the state, to go back to Muhlenberg, discuss with their AD and their administration about ways that we can maybe suggest, or they can suggest to us a better way to do it, so that he can back in July and maybe share with us some information, because if they're not willing to do that, maybe it is time to make a move. If they're willing to at least say, hey, you know what, we hear you and we need you guys. I understand the JV situation as an old football coach. Sometimes JV teams pulled up and we had 9 people and we couldn't play the varsity guys because we couldn't take the chance. So I understand that side of it too. But I also understand as a JV player at points in my life, I really wanted to play. And practice was tough because I could play better than those guys, but I was getting beat up. But that's the way I was used. So I would ask that he give us more information, try your best, and I have a feeling I know where it's going, but we have to make sure you understand that the premise for co-ops was that everybody had a chance to play. Okay, so the problem is, over the years, people have changed the premise to try and get an advantage. That's the problem. And that's why PIAA sometimes gets, let's just say, stubborn and doesn't listen to your valid argument, because they've heard so many other arguments that turned out to be not valid.
Yeah, we were all
Yeah.
really excited about
So,
Debbie Boone, and
gotcha.
Muhlenberg actually beat them this year.
Gotcha.
We would love to even just because of their youth program and what they can offer, would be willing to go to a team that lost more, just because the kids would have the experience of playing.
So I would ask that, you try and give it a shot and come back to us and let us know. Okay? What else you do?
The next is a list of co-curricular, extracurricular as they stand today. We'll have more for you in July and hopefully August will refill. Not a lot of anything new there. A lot of people are splitting, which is what the 50-50 means.
How many spots do we have to fill?
We're still working on it. We're still getting them coming in too.
Most of the co-curricular are filled.
Yeah, most of the athletics still.
Co-curricular is probably the best shape it's been in
Yeah, it
for
looks really
several
good.
years. Yeah, extracurricular, hit or miss.
Major sports are pretty much done.
Okay.
So, getting there.
We have anything else? Anybody want? Yes, ma'am.
So I'm sure I'm not saying anything new, because, our president has a good amount, but, said something about federal funding being tied, with the school lunches being tied to a transgender policy. It's just something that was brought to my attention. I didn't hear it being mentioned in the deal or something we discussed, but have we been considering that, how it's going to affect our funding and what our decision package moving forward?
We know nothing about that.
Very about that. Has anybody board heard anything about that? I'm not familiar with that.
Being talked about, like.
There's a lot of stuff being talked about that never makes it.
What exactly are they getting at?
So they're saying the federal funding for children that is currently being given to us is going to be tied to pushing a transgender policy into the public schools. That's it, I'm fed up. We need to start, pushing forward with equity, I guess is what they called it, and we're gonna move forward with this policy into the school system and say you no longer can give free lunches to your children unless you adopt this, which says you don't care about the children that are less fortunate and can't afford lunches. We're gonna go ahead and push it forward. So I'm just bringing it up. It's out there. Look it up. Not something we need to discuss today,
But
but
it-
it's something we're talking about bringing forward. And there's another one.
Yeah, it's not gonna fly because it's discriminatory anyway.
Absolutely.
So it's not gonna fly. He can talk about it all he wants. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of rhetoric being passed around right now, but national school lunch program has nothing to do with the tie to that kind of a policy. They're two totally different sets of the house.
We know we can.
Well,
That's your opinion.
you can't tie those two things together under the way the laws are. So they can talk about what they want, but they won't.
Any other questions out there? All right, folks, we got an exec session in a couple minutes, so thank you.